On today's episode of WatchJRGo, we're back with my cheap Hummer H3. And in the last episode, we fixed a lot of stuff. In this episode, we have to fix the insane noise that's coming out of the front end of it. And you already know what it is. What is going on, guys? I am WatchJRGo, and like I said, I'm here with my 2007 Hummer H3. The last of the Hummers. Well, really, the H3T was the last, but they were towards the end of that glorious Hummer reign. And, of course, in this one, we have a big transmission fluid leak, one that just doesn't quit. And wouldn't you know it, a bad fan clutch. This fan runs non-stop. In fact, I'll just cut to the clip right now. So look at that's 2,000 RPM. It sounds like it's completely broken. It sounds like the transmission has fully given up the ghost. That is how terrible it is driving this thing around. That fan is always screaming like it's a semi, and it makes it hard to troubleshoot everything else because it's so loud. It sounds like the transmission is slipping, even though there were warnings in the manual, like I said, about the transmission not being the issue here. Now this fan clutch, even right now, there's a ton of resistance right there, so that must mean that clutch is engaged. So we have a new fan clutch here from O'Reilly's. This is a 2787. They had it in stock, which is awesome. And it does not appear to be, at least this one especially, does not appear to be the electric one. So some of these have an electric fan clutch, which is a mechanical clutch with wires going into it. And this looks about right to me. Bolt holes are on the correct side. The fan bolts to the back of this clutch, and the rest of it all sticks out there. So hopefully just swapping this in solves all of our problems. Also from O'Reilly's, I have the fan clutch tools here. So we have the water pump bolt holding tool basically, and we also have the clutch tool here because it has all the different sizes, and the fan clutch itself is pretty big. Let's see, the one I have doesn't have these giant ones, but this is like probably the 36 or the 48, one of those two. It's the 36. All right, we've got our tool figured out. Now, a lot of times it's really hard to get these off. Everyone has a different plan for how they like to get them off. Sometimes you use this. You do need a really slim wrench because you have to get in that tiny little spot there between the fan blade and the water pump pulley there. And you also need to hold the water pump pulley somehow. Some people jam stuff underneath. Some people just get the torch right in there. Some people start the engine. We're just gonna try to do it with none of those and brute force with the wrench. The fan shroud also needs to come off. And on this, it looks like you just squeeze tabs on both sides and pull up. I'm gonna try that right now. So one tab is right here, and the other tab, obviously, should be right here. Yep, you can squeeze those forward. And it looks like we might have to pull this radiator hose off. I'm gonna try to avoid that. Wow, that was easier than I expected. It kind of came right off of that. And now there's some locks down here towards the bottom. Those need released as well. Never done this before, but it looks pretty straightforward. What on earth? I've never in my life seen... What a genius system. What a genius system. This is cool. And then you line this up with its notches? Wow. Good on you, Hummer and GM. This is the best, definitely the best shroud removal I've ever seen in my entire life. That is insane. I think we pretty much just took that whole thing apart in a couple of seconds. This hose is definitely gonna have to come off. It's original. Basically what this did, it has like an angle on it, and now we have a really slim profile at the bottom that should come around the fan, and then when you spin this back, it puts it back at like a thick 2-inch shroud, so it's actually pulling air through. So let's see what we got here. We'll clamp this radiator hose with our vice grip hose clamps. We're almost there. We're almost there, come on. That's the shroud. One thing to know, I did have to actually pull the radiator cap to get the shroud out of there. The clearance is like, I mean, it's so tight that much space actually matters there. So once the cap came off, the shroud came right out. Obviously our new clutch is here ready to go in, and the old clutch is in the fan right there. So after this, you can see the bolts on the water pump down there. Of course, 4 of them. We'll use the holding tool on that, and we'll stick the big wrench on there and see if we can smack this thing loose. Obviously, it's usually an act of God to get these things off of here. Hopefully we win today. I know I couldn't show the magic, but I had 1 foot up here and 1 foot on the wrench, and both hands pulling on the water pump bolt wrench there. And of course it's counterclockwise for this, so make sure your wrench on the nut is going that way. And then I pulled with all my strength, and it just came loose. Easiest fan clutch I've ever done in my life. Usually they end up taking me multiple hours. And look at that, it is unscrewing. So don't drop this. Sometimes the fan blades will explode. If you do, we're getting there. Who knows how many threads we have to actually undo here. Oh, it's getting wiggly. Just about there. One of those bolts on the water pump actually seemed like it was loosening up as I was using it to hold. And then we'll pull out the probably 4 tens holding the fan blade onto the clutch. And this should get pretty easy, pretty quick. Man, I'd hate to do this belt. This is a job you should do when the fan is off. Obviously you can get it around it, but a lot easier to do with the fan off. That belt looks like it's in really good shape, or, oh, I'd be doing it right this moment. Every time I hit this, dirt was falling out. So let's take a look at this. It looks like it's been replaced. Is it the same part? 27872. Oh, this is a different part number. But it sure looks like the same clutch, same diameter. Exactly the same. All the marks there line up. Well, let's just put this one on there and see what happens. Probably the best thing we could do. The rotation's the same. You can see the R and the arrow. Everything looks like it's gonna work out. Let's just put it together. We're gonna speed up the process on the fan blade here. This should just take 2 seconds. Wow, those were in there. This thing's turned up to 2. Put our new one in. Look at all the dirt falling out of this as it goes. I think it might have just gotten clogged up with trash. That's a very real possibility here. Hey, it's got a centering ring. I can't be upset with this fan. It actually is not a terrible job. All of our bolts are started. A couple seconds later. New fan clutch installed. Slide this thing back on, and we are ready to do some testing. Why were all the water pump pulley bolts totally loose? That's a tad interesting. At least the threads on this look super nice. Kind of looks like somebody put a water pump on here recently. All right, so if it was counterclockwise coming off, clockwise going on, like butter. Some people say to torque these things. Other people say to start the engine. Your take. Totally your take. Here's what I'm gonna do to torque it. I'll torque it the mechanic way here. Here's the mechanic torque setting for you. 46 foot-pounds, never coming off. Done. Let's put this shroud back on, hook our hose back up, and fill this thing back up with coolant. Getting everything to fit back in here in one piece is a 1 to 2 man job. Extra hands would honestly really help. So there's a breather here that might be the transmission, it looks like. And that needs to go back in its little clip right here. Get that locked back in. We can put our hose back on now, which is actually a bit of a struggle because of how long the nipple is. There it goes. And of course we can spin our radiator shroud back into its lock position here, which is right there. Everything's locked in. We're ready to refill the coolant. But first, let's start this thing up and see if it no longer sounds like a diesel truck, which is everything we were here to do today. This hose clamp is about the last thing standing in our way here. We've got it all right back where it goes. Get all of our tools out of here, start it up. Well, it seems better, but it always sounds pretty chill at idle. So we'll give it a couple of revs here, see if that makes it sound any better, and then we'll take it out for a drive, and hopefully it's much quieter instead of the screaming fan that was honestly creating a big problem before. It really is hard to troubleshoot when you can't hear what's going on. It's still locked on. Well, here we are with the exact same problem. I let it go all the way up to temp and it still has not disengaged. And obviously it should have disengaged pretty quickly after start and then came up to temp and kicked on, but instead nothing like that's happening. It's just staying on all the time. So there's a few things that could have happened. They say if a fan clutch is stored on its face like this, like they all are obviously, they can just stay on until the fluid migrates back to the bottom. So we're gonna try that. I'm gonna let it sit for a bit here. And then the other thing is maybe this one leaked all of its fluid out. Look, the box is covered in oil there. So that definitely could have happened, but you'd think we would have seen the same leaks or something like that from this one, and this one is nice and dry. So the other thing I might try here is heating this up with just a heat gun and seeing if it gets any easier. Honestly, I think the old fan clutch was fine too. Let's throw a heat gun on it and see what happens. That's as far as it moves right there, from like right there all the way over to there. So you can see everything seems to be working as designed, and this one is just as stiff as the one I just put on basically. All right, let's try this again. The engine's cooled down. I still think this fan isn't loose enough. It should be a little more relaxed. Shows it's nice and cold again. It was all the way up to temp before. Full fan. You guys see the speedometer move when I floored it? Hey, look at that.
Welcome to OnStar Personal Calling. To make phone calls, say simple commands like dial, call, and store.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Somebody actually put an OnStar retention module in when they put in that aftermarket head unit. I am a little bit mind blown. The head unit's a Jensen, and Jensen buyers are not the people that spend the extra 150 bucks for OnStar retention. Anyway, I'm really surprised that that all works. But the fan clutch, it does not work. I checked a few other websites to confirm that this is the correct fan clutch for the Hummer H3. It definitely is. Counterclockwise rotation, everything fits perfectly. There's really no other option to do other than pick up like a GM original one, and that might fix it, but then I'm still rolling the dice. They need a test program where I could just grab another one from GM, see if it works, and then return it if it doesn't work. Either way, my relationship with this fan at this point is a very rocky one. I am over it, and we're just gonna fix the transmission and be done with it. Well, if the fan needs to run all the time, the fan's gonna run all the time. It's terrible, and it makes you feel like you're going way slower. I don't know why. It's just, it feels like you're driving like a boat through water, and that's a propeller. That's kind of what it's like when that fan clutch is stuck on. So, we're done with the fan for the day. Next up, we're gonna get the transmission out of this thing. At this point, I'm about 100% sure it is the seal on the front of the transmission. I've been watching where it's dripping from. It's still dripping, so it probably wasn't the pan, unfortunately. And I'll fill it back up one more time, double check. Honestly, the solution might be leave a GoPro out here on time lapse and just see where the drips are coming from. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop WatchJRGo.com for cool shirts just like this. And please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and I will talk to you next time. And before anyone thinks it might be the ambient temperature that's making the fan come on, it's 60 degrees outside. It's not warm. The engine's not warm. It should be disengaged. It makes no sense that it's stuck on. Well, I took it for a drive. I cleaned the garage. Things are looking up, but the fan clutch, I just don't know. It's still incredibly loud anytime it's over like 2,500 RPM. No other truck does this. So that's, you know, that's my bar for is it working or is it not working. You wouldn't expect this from any old mechanical clutch stuff other than giant diesels that stay locked in. So why would this simple small street truck run so much fan RPM? So I don't know. Maybe it's better, maybe it's not, but anything below 2,000 RPM now, it sounds very reasonable. Idle, completely reasonable. I just don't know. Maybe it really is like the loudest fan clutch in the world. And I remember I used to drive a Canyon or a Colorado for a company truck. I love that thing. I put like 100,000 miles on it. It had the i5. It did great. Like people are saying this is underpowered. Well, it wasn't underpowered in the truck. This doesn't weigh too much more than the truck, I gotta say. And that thing was peppy. It was downright fun a lot of times. So those are my expectations for this. And I remember that its fan wasn't typically this loud. So I don't know. On to the transmission. We'll get this thing back on the road for real.